Right. Okay. And what we're calling this? Bootcamp.
We're calling it Spring Half Marathon Bootcamp, and I don't know whether everybody who listens to this is going to be listening to this for a spring half marathon. I guess the joy is that you can use it for anything, but where we are right now and what we're kind of gearing towards is that big shift in the year where January hits and you suddenly start scrabbling around because you realize that it's only 12 weeks, 16 weeks, whatever it is, until your half marathon. We've all been there.
It's funny, isn't it? Because it's like, for runners, and you are a runner, but for runners, the 1st of January and the 1st of September hits different than anyone else. Like, I
Yeah.
think that the non-running population might see those dates with a kind of a gloom and a kind of a dip and a sort of, oh, let's hunker down and kind of, the first day of school or the first day of the year, it's a kind of hibernation mode rather than anything else. But for us lot, this is when everything kicks off, and it's usually kind of the beginning of the year because of a spring marathon, or the beginning of kind of the middle of summer, really, heading into our autumn half marathons and marathons. But right now, when at time of recording, it's a few weeks off, and we've really got to start getting into it. So the reason why we're doing this is we thought that this is perfect timing to talk to everyone who is staring a half marathon in the face, or wants to improve their time in a half marathon, or is taking one on for the first time. Basically, it's the half marathon gang.
It is the half marathon gang. That's nice.
Yeah.
And I also, at risk of being, not being niche enough, I don't want it to exclude anybody who's also worrying about a 10K or a marathon, or, I suppose there will be tips that are going to be useful for any runner, but, God willing. But I think in general, that's what a lot of us at the kind of ability and allowance for time. And I know the majority of us, if we want a big challenge, that's the kind of race that we're going to gear ourselves up for. And that's exactly what we're doing at the moment, both training for a half.
We are. And it's interesting, isn't it, for us too, because we have both been on running journeys for various lengths of time. And I wanted to know, I think, right from the start, what do you think about that half marathon distance? Do you like it?
I think I would go so far as to say that it's my favorite distance.
Holly.
I know, in defense of the half marathon, my thesis, I think with the popularity of running at the moment, and with how much content we're seeing all the time of people who are doing incredible feats, like running the length of Africa and doing a, however many kilometer a day run streak or whatever. I love that for all of those people, but I think we are losing sight of the fact that, like, a marathon was the original very, very long distance, very, very hard achievement.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of almost become the half now, that, like, people look at that as something that, as a marathon, as something that they can just sort of, like, that they might plonk in the diary as, like, a goal to kind of put a spring in their step or something. Absolutely. If you've got that fitness level, and if you do a hell of a lot of running, then of course you can do that. But, and, I am also a big supporter of the mantra that anybody can run a marathon if you prepare well enough and if you put the hours and the training in. But I think that we've lost sight of the fact that the half is also a very long distance and is a huge challenge in itself. It seems to have got lost a little bit somewhere in the realms of, like, marathons and ultras are like hardcore distance. That's what, all the Made in Chelsea cast are doing. Then you've got, your 10Ks and 5Ks, where you've got people that you follow on Instagram who are super speedy, who are trying to sort of do sub 15-minute or whatever, and you're kind of watching that process. I'm not really seeing the half represented that much anymore. When I began my running journey a mere 6 years ago, that was the distance that I feel like lots of people were talking about and wanted to do. I love it. I think it is a real challenge, but it's also a manageable distance to train for if you don't want to ruin every weekend for like 3 months.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've never ever been a fast runner, not for any distance whatsoever. And I think it's quite easy when you first start running to think that the distance that you aim for should be progressive. Like you build up to 5K, you build up to 10K, you build up to half marathon, you build up to,
Mm.
that it should be those kind of logical distance steps. And I don't think that's necessarily actually the case for a lot of people. I don't think you need to do that. And I think one of the reasons why you don't need to do that is because it quickly becomes apparent that when you're kind of around the 5K bit and then around the 10K bit, that if you're not a fast runner, those distances can be a bit off putting because of the fast runners that do them.
Yeah.
And I think discovering a half marathon, discovering the half marathon as a distance, is also discovering that people don't run fast.
That's the joy. I think that's a big reason. It was one of the first distances that I discovered that I thought, oh, I've always been more of a plodder, even back in my cross country school days.
Mm.
And finally discovering a distance where you could run at a comfortable pace, and that was like socially acceptable.
Yeah, yes. That's it's socially acceptable. It's acceptable to chat on the way around. It's acceptable to walk. It's acceptable to chat, to eat, to drink, to
Mm-hmm.
to stop. All these things which you don't really see that in a 10K so much.
No. I mean,
But
there are 10Ks out there that are becoming a bit more geared towards beginner runners, aren't they? Aren't there? Where
mm,
Vitality is a great example where you will see people partying their way around. But I completely agree. There is nothing like the atmosphere of a half marathon, because there's that like trepidation. People are nervous because it's a big thing that we're about to
mm.
all go and do. But it's not like a marathon start line where everybody's serious, visiting the Portaloo 10 times, putting those swid strips on their noses. Like, it's more relaxed, it's more festival-y, but with the big thing in mind that, like, you're there to achieve something that is like a massive feat.
Yes, and it is a massive feat, and I think it's worth going back to that little bit, which I think you were saying right at the start, which is it's a huge distance. It's
Mhm.
massive, 13.1 miles. It's a long, long way to go on foot, and I still see people underestimate that distance, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this because and I actually, to be fair, I mean, we're, part of the Women's Running Podcast, so we know that we're talking mostly to women, but I see that actually most of the people that underestimate the distance when I've done half marathons, I think most of the people I see that do that are men.
Yeah.
So and I think this is quite a thing. This happens at races quite a lot. And it's not all men, but some men will turn up at the start line, particularly of a
Not all
half
men.
marathon, not all men, and they will underestimate the training that needs to go into it, whereas women are more likely to prepare really well. And what we want to do is to help both men and women prepare for a half marathon because you do really need to prepare. It takes time.
You do need to prepare. I will say, flying by the absolute seat of my pants,
Yes.
a half marathon is probably the longest distance that you could get away with just not properly training very well for, but you will have not a very nice day at all.
Yeah.
It really is like, yeah, not something that you can rock up and do on the day. It is so much better enjoyed and so much more rewarding if you put the training in. But as we mentioned before, that training is not necessarily going to be running intensely long distances that take up half of your Sunday morning every week, or spending covering like 30 miles a week in distance or anything. It is more manageable, and it's also like you can have so much fun. There are endless goals with a half marathon. I thought, like you were saying, I would get bored of halves, and I did my first marathon and it was amazing. It was great. But the first thing I wanted to do was run another half, because I thought, I've built this kind of endurance now. Now I want to go back and see whether I can have more fun with a half, whether I can do a half a bit more quickly, whether I can do a half in a certain amount of weeks. There are so many challenges that you can set yourself with that distance, because it is a little bit more manageable than 26.2 miles, but it is still something that, yeah, you've got plenty to sink your teeth into.
Absolutely. So let's talk about our first half marathons, if you can remember that far back, because I thought that it would be really useful in this first episode to talk about, like, your first half marathon was 6 years ago, right?
Yeah. So I was going to say, not that long ago.
Not that long ago. I mean, it's still a chunk, isn't it? And my first half marathon was, I think, 22 years ago. I know, a generation ago.
Sunrise, sunset.
So why don't we talk about how we trained for those half marathons, and the mistakes that we made that we would like you guys not to also do? I mean, obviously, I probably
Great
ran in
show.
clogs or something, didn't I? I can't
Yeah,
remember.
you measured your distance with a piece of string.
I did. I
Actually,
think
you
I did.
did. You did. I think
I
we've
did.
talked about that before.
Yeah.
Okay, shall I go first?
Yes, go for it.
So I did my first half in 2020, sorry. I think there are several reasons why I wouldn't recommend doing a half in 2020, but obviously those go without saying.
Yeah,
I was actually really lucky that our race we did the Bath half together, actually,
we
in
did.
2020. And we were probably one of the only races to go ahead of the sort of spring half marathon cohort,
Yeah.
because it was like the week or two before we were plunged into a bizarre nightmare land.
Mhm.
So I do feel quite lucky that I got to do my race, but it was all slightly strange circumstances. Like, there were like hardly any supporters, and it all felt quite serious, and
Yeah.
it wasn't quite the party atmosphere that I have come to know and love from the Bath half now. But it was my first ever half, and really my like 0 to 100 with running. I had just started on women's running, and Esther encouraged me to sign up to it. I think we had a bunch of colleagues that were doing it. It wasn't actually
Yeah.
just like a magazine related thing. I think as a work team, we figured out that we could get like a sort of corporate entry, and we were like, let's all go for it as a big team together.
Yeah.
And it was really nice. It was kind of a thing that really united us all for a while. There were a group of us all, and some of us would run together at lunch times, and everyone was talking about it. And I immediately fell head over heels for that part, which is the bit of running that I still love to this day, which is that community thing
Yeah.
of, oh my God, I have so much boring content to talk about with these people who are the only people in the world who also care about it.
Yeah.
Love that. Hey, dining out on it as we speak.
Yeah.
And so that was what I was doing. But I really did jump into it having not run at all for like years, being realistic with it, since school probably. I'd done a couple of runs here and there, but it was, interestingly, it was always the thing that I went back to when I realized I needed to do some sport again.
Yeah.
So I guess running hasn't come completely out of the blue. It's always maybe felt like the most natural sport to me to
Yeah.
have a crack at. But I was going, from 0 to half in the space of, I think I had about 4 months to do this training. And I remember spending the time before Christmas, just trying to break the back of 5K. My first ever run was a mile, and I could do a mile without stopping when I started.
Wow. Okay.
But I don't think it was hugely quick. I mean, to be honest, it was probably like as quick as my easy pace now. I think I just sort of went out there and gave it a go, but it didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And I was super intimidated by, I mean, we'll talk about all of this. In fact, listen to our Start to Run series if you want more detail on some of this stuff. But I was
Yeah.
very intimidated by the whole, like, what do I wear? Where do I go thing?
Yeah.
And I remember at around Christmas time, I was home with my parents. That was when I first ran a 5K, and I was really proud of myself.
Oh,
And that was, I think, the first moment where I thought, I'm going to be able to do this. But first pitfall here, I was following no sort of training plan or kind of like guide in any way. I think I was just plugging away, running like 3 times a week, maybe, trying to hit the distance. I would just stop when I got tired, basically,
yeah.
until I got to comfortably being able to do 5K. And then I think after Christmas, I sort of followed a bit of a plan that maybe we'd kind of made up, that
Yeah.
was like 2 5Ks a week,
Yeah.
and then adding a mile on from then on every weekend. So I think after that, I did 4 miles, 5 miles, 6 miles. I don't know whether that's actually like a super bad idea if it is your first half. Now, I would think about doing different types of running. Like I was running one pace
Yes.
and I wasn't really thinking about like zones or heart rate or any of that stuff at all. But
Mhm.
like, again, in defense of the basic bitch method,
Yeah.
like it was fine.
Yeah.
I did build
Yeah.
fitness that way.
Yes. I think it does. I think there is, let's defend that, because I think it does work, and it's definitely the way in which I did my first
Mm.
3 half marathons.
Yeah, tell me about yours.
Very, very similar, very similar. I'd had a up and down relationship with running. My parents were both runners, and so I'd done it. It was my fallback, fitness, especially when you're a student, because like you got no money, have you? So it's like, well,
Yeah.
just do that instead.
Yeah, I guess maybe
Um,
that was a driving factor, to be honest. Hadn't thought about that.
yeah, it's cash.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I did do that, and then I had just had friends around me that were doing half marathons, and so I just thought, oh well, if they can, then I can. Um, that is a not, I think, a winning solution. If they can, that doesn't mean that you, well, anyway, that I could. Anyway,
Mhm.
so I did start training, and I trained in a very similar way. I didn't have a training plan. It was 22 years ago. I think I might have bought a copy of Runner's World or something like that, but I don't remember. I don't think I even
Bleep
had
that out, Dave.
sorry, yeah, sorry. I don't think I even had internet access at home. I don't think I had a laptop at home or anything like that.
I
So
hadn't even considered how much extra complication that would add if you can't just be like, how long is a half marathon even? Like, if you
yeah,
can't Google anything.
just didn't have a clue. So I would be using. I mean, I was working, so I probably just used a work laptop, and I was just trying to figure out, you know, what to do. I think I might have Googled a little bit to get a bit of information, but otherwise it was just me, and I was doing a very similar thing, and I was doing a couple of 5Ks a week. I even remember the route that I used to take, which was part of the half marathon that we would do, because we were both training for the Bath half, um, at separate generational points,
Mhm.
and um, and then one long run where I'd add on a mile a week, and I had no nutrition, no hydration,
No, me
didn't know
neither.
didn't know anything about that. Didn't know anyone that would do anything like that. Didn't know anyone that was training for it, in fact, at that time. Didn't have any information whatsoever. So, I mean, there were things where I realized that I would get thirsty. And so I used to leave my front door and post a little bottle of water in a hedge. And then I would run like, 3 or 4 miles out, come back, and then I'd be able to pick it up on the way back.
That is exactly what I would do as well. So when I first started, I noticed that as I got beyond sort of like 6 miles, I was starting to get thirsty,
Mm,
and I would for a little while, I remember like planning a stop halfway through. So when I did 10 miles, I very specifically remember being like, I'll do 5 to this co-op because then I can get a bottle of water.
yeah.
And then
Yes.
or even sometimes a Lucozade, which again was probably my body being like, you also need some electrolytes, you need some sugar, you need
Yeah.
some, um, and then I would either carry it with me and drink it for a bit, or yeah, I would hide it in a hedge and then come and get it on the way back. Um,
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
kind of making our lives quite hard, I think, doing that sort of thing,
And also putting a very annoying stop in the middle. Like, again, this was actually probably quite good for me at the time because I
Mm,
was training on very little base fitness to try to do distances like 10, 11 miles. Like, I think it was probably quite good that I stopped halfway through and brought my heart rate down to get a drink.
yeah.
But actually, annoyingly, that's adding like 5-10 minutes to your run to go and fiddle around in a supermarket and then having to hold something. So glad that I discovered a hydration vest.
Hydration vest. That's tip
Oh.
number 1. My tip was that I did 3 half marathons to begin with in my 30s, and I did them when I was 30, 31, and then tellingly 33. And
Mm.
although I'd signed up for it when I was 32, I didn't do it because I was injured. And so my first one had gone okay. My second one, I'd gone really well. And then with the third one, I just got cocky with the training. And I
Oh.
just, just got, it's not that I undertrained, it's that I overtrained too quickly, too fast, too much mileage. And I picked up a stress fracture. And I remember that. I remember the pain of it. And I also remember the emotional pain of
Mm.
having to not run when I was going to see a physiotherapist at the time. She said, no, you really can't do this. Can't do this. And I kept on picking up things like calf muscle strains. And because that had adjusted the way in which I ran, it eventually meant that I picked up this stress fracture in my foot. I was just covered in injuries at the time.
Yeah.
So there's no surprise really that I then, after that last one, which I kind of hobbled through, I think, I then didn't run another half marathon for 10 years.
Yeah, fair
So,
enough.
yeah, because I just thought, well, it's painful. It's painful. It's just
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out a way in which I could do it. I thought that was my last one ever. So I think one of the things that we really, really want to kind of hammer home in the next sort of 9 episodes is the things that you can do to prevent that from happening. Because if you do pick up an injury, it's to do with overuse mostly. And it's getting over enthusiastic, like little
It is getting over
puppies.
enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Similarly, I had a similar experience with my marathon training, and I didn't understand why I was injured, and I was like, is it the gravel that I'm running on? Am I wearing the wrong shoes? And looking back, it was just that suddenly I was running 4 times a week when I'd never done that before.
Yeah.
And that your body does need time to get used to this stuff. So I think that would actually be my main tip. And I know that is a really annoying tip to give you when we're already in January,
Yeah.
but giving yourself plenty of time is great. I guess you don't want to over egg it because you're going to need to make sure that you're not training for too long at longer distances.
Mm.
But making sure that you've got plenty of time to get up to 5K, for example, at the beginning before you start your plan in earnest, or
Yeah.
giving yourself a couple of weeks grace so that if something does happen, like you're put out for a week because you've hurt yourself or you're ill, or that would be something that I never do. But I will
Mm.
say hollowly at you now.
It's true. Like, yeah, speaking to some great PTs over the years, great run coaches, and they always say, build in 2 weeks, build in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Just because there might be a week, yeah, where you've got a tiny bit of a weird feeling, a little ache in your ankle or in your knee or something like that. And actually, the very, very best thing you can do in that following week is to rest it and
Yeah.
cross train and not run on it. And then chances are you're fine the week
Yeah.
after. But if you continue to run on it, you might not be. It might get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And, it's crushing if you're then laid off for a few weeks. But yeah, building those weeks for a bit of time off and
Yeah.
to kind of, and also I think the other thing about training plans, like what we were doing with those kind of quite primitive training plans that we both followed at that time, is that we were just gradually doing more and more and more each week. And actually now, if you look at most training plans for a half marathon distance and beyond, they'll have deload weeks,
Yeah.
which which kind of helps you in much the same way as having a resting week, where you will have built up to like 6 or 7 or 8 miles as your long run, and then the week after it will drop down to like 4,
Love that.
which is
Always
great.
love that. I actually think as well that's an important point to make about this series is that that kind of thing is going to be really important if you're trying to build speed. So obviously we're talking to all lovely first time half marathoners, but I know lots of you listening are probably going to have run half marathons before and you might have different goals in mind, speed based or whatever it is, finding it more comfortable.
Mhm.
And deload weeks, if you want to like be able to run at for longer periods of time comfortably, then running some quite long distances in your training, but then having drop down weeks in between is definitely going to be more similar to what your plan looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that, I mean, the key takeaway from this first chat really is find yourself a great training plan. And if you're a bit of an Esther Newman, that means finding yourself 3 training plans and cross-referencing them.
Yeah.
Um, that's fine, as long as they're all written by experts. So what I do is I get a couple. I find the one that's applicable to me, and and it's tricky as well because you know what? One other, I think, mistake that both of us have made in the past is looked at training plans that are widely available, um, and picked one that was wrong for us. And I think one mistake that I fell into was thinking, well, I've run a half marathon before, therefore I must be an intermediate,
Yes, me too.
not a beginner. And actually, if you've not run a half marathon for quite some time,
Yeah.
there is no shame in getting the beginner one. I mean, do look through it, look at the distances, look at what they're asking you to do every week, and really be honest with yourself about your time, your schedule, your family life,
Yeah.
work, like how you're going to fit it in,
Yeah.
and be honest about where your fitness is now.
Yeah.
Because quite often, I always go back to a beginner one. Always.
Absolutely. When I set up my training plans, so I know lots of us use physical plans, and hey, check out the Women's Running website, which has got plenty.
It
Um,
has.
but if I'm going to massively undersell us and promote something else completely, I use Cooper, which is a training app. There are plenty available, but Cooper I love very much. And the thing that it always asks me when I'm setting up a particular plan will be how many times a week I'm going to physically really be able to run,
Mhm.
which I think is the most important starting point is how many runs a week are you working off? What your I mean, it's not even necessarily what your time goal is. It will ask you to plug in if you've done that distance before, what your previous goal was, and if you've got a goal for this time. But for the marathon, for example, my goal was finishing it and I plugged in a random time that I wasn't too worried about keeping
Mhm.
to. But having a vague time in mind will help you be able to know what kind of pace you want to run your easy runs, your long runs at, um, and how long you've got, how many weeks you're going to do it in. And I think that is the basic triad of
Yeah.
how to start working out your plan. How long have you got to do it? How many runs a week are you going to do? And have you got a sort of vague time in mind that can help you sort of figure out your pace a little bit?
Yeah, and with all of those things, no one's looking over your shoulder unless someone is actually looking over your shoulder, which means that you can be brutally honest. So, with a lot of these things, if you're doing something, if you're filling out something online or you've got an app or
Mhm.
whatever, put in a pace you know that you can do, not necessarily unless you're going for a fast time, but it's not, if it's your first half marathon, this is not the time to say, "Oh, you know what? I really fancy doing that in like an hour and 10 minutes." This is not the time.
Yeah.
If it's your first ever half marathon, go online because there are plenty of little calculators out there where you can put in a recent time for like a 10K or a 5K, and they will calculate a rough finish time for a half marathon and then use that as your goal time and then work backwards from that. Yeah, because it's something that I mean, I fall foul. I mean, I say this,
Mm.
but do I do it? No, probably not. I do lie a little bit. I do say, "Oh, I think I could probably do it 5 minutes
I
quicker," and
always
whatever.
lie. I always lie. Or actually, in this case, I've underdone my time. Like, I'm trying to get a sub 2-hour half marathon at the moment,
Mm.
and I've put 2 as my thing so that my pace is a bit kinder, and then I'll do a quick sprint finish on the day. That's my plan. Just to get that 1 second under.
Just 1 second under.
Yeah.
I think lots of people do that, don't they?
Yeah.
Surely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for this. I feel like this is going to be a fun series. And hopefully we're all going to be able to support each other to achieve our goals. Look at us.
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so. And if your goal is to get over the finish line, then, you know, please join the gang, because
Yeah, yeah.
that is also my goal this year.
Mhm.
It's just to finish comfortably, to not feel as though I want to puke, to actually enjoy the experience. And that's the other thing about half marathons. You can do them. There are so many of them that the goal might not necessarily be to just finish it. It might be to experience the city that you're running it in, or the location where you've done it.
Yeah.
You know, like I'd say my very worst half marathon was in Brighton, because
Mhm.
I didn't enjoy the weather or the switchbacks, and I know the city. I'm over familiar with the city. And my very best was New Forest, where I was watched by 14 ponies and one marshal clapping very loudly, and that
Yeah.
was it, and that was really, really nice. But other people's experiences, they might want to run, you know, Boston Half, or like, you know,
Yeah.
Raw Parks, or, you know, huge, great big mammoth city half marathons. There are so many to choose
Oh
from.
my gosh, so many. That's actually a really good quiz question, and I'm going to try and answer the same thing. What's my worst and
Worst,
best?
yes.
For me, my worst, I think, is a virtual half marathon that I did in 2021, because I learned from that I need structure, support if I'm going to enjoy the day. Like, I can run a half marathon with my headphones on and just
Mm,
get it done, but it didn't feel like a race in the way that I hoped it would, and it didn't have the same I didn't have the same wind in my sails.
yeah.
And my very best is weirdly a toss up between the New York. We did a women's only half marathon in New York, and it was amazing.
Mm,
It was round Central Park, and it was beautiful, and I wasn't worried about pace. I was just looking around and being like, this is so gorgeous and stunning. I'm so happy. And then the other one it tosses up between is the Bath Half last time, last year that we ran. I was in the middle of marathon training, so it was going to feel more comfortable because my kind of fitness level was higher at the time.
yeah.
But I think it was just a realization after doing quite a few halves in like other countries or in under slightly complicated conditions, that I could just wake up and eat a banana and go
Yeah.
to a place I knew. I actually completely forgot about it. My alarm went off and I was like, "What's that for?" Oh god.
Yeah.
And that was a very
Yeah.
nice feeling rather than a sleepless night, which normally is what
Yeah.
happens.
And
Yeah.
that's definitely a shout out to local races, local
Yeah.
small races. I mean, Bath Half is actually quite big, but racing somewhere that's on your doorstep
It's
is
just
not to be
great.
underestimated
Yeah.
in terms of kind of alleviating anxiety, race day kind of nerves, things like that.
Yeah.
If it's there, and you don't have to also worry about public transport, you don't have to worry about kind of hotels, um, or cost, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, that sort of thing is a great thing to go for
It
if you've got
is.
something that's going on in your local area.
Yeah, it is. I think that's the thing. Weigh up what it is that you want to do, because there are merits to all of the above, and have a great time.
Yeah.
I know it won't
Absolutely.
all be great. It never is, but I
Yeah.
hope that during this training block, and if you're following along with us, you can also find some of those lovely nuggets of when you're just flying, when you're running along and you're like, oh, this is the nice bit. This is why I do all those miles and all those sessions. And let's go and smash a half marathon together.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Do come back and listen to the rest of this series. We've got lots of information about pace, about nutrition, about what to wear,
Yeah.
about God, I mean, just how to get around those 13.1 miles. But we
Without
will
falling
be
to bits.
indeed, and we'll
Mhm.
hope that all of us together will be with each other, linking arms virtually and getting ourselves over the finish line.
Yeah. I think next week we're going to be talking about the types of runs that we need to do to get quicker, get more comfortable, what our training plans might look like in terms of that split of running. But let's get into that next week. For now, happy running.
Happy running.